Okay, so welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the top 10 cards from Theros. Well, actually, I guess it's not the actual top 10, but I wanted to give at least some cards that I think people could use just awareness of. Because I've had several people asking, what should I be trading for? What cards have value? What are people going to be interested in this weekend? And well, since it's release weekend of the set and we've only had pre release, there's been a lot of change in value, a lot of change in what cards people are playing. And I kind of want to give some insight to that. And when you're here thinking about this, don't necessarily consider these to be the most valuable cards. These are cards that are probably going to be easiest to trade because people are looking for these. I've kind of taken this list or made this list from playing on Arena the last few days, going through Twitter, seeing what decks people are doing well with, and coming up with a list of cards that people are actually building with, playing with, that there's some interest and hype in. Mostly because one, that means you can trade these cards fairly easily. There's going to be somebody looking for them. Or two, you should pick them up because they're probably going to go into a deck that you'll want to play. So let's go ahead and hop into the list. The first one that's probably a bit surprising to people is Dream Trawler. I think when the spoiler or preview happened and people were able to see this card, I don't think there was a lot of hype around it. But here we are. Now it's showing up in a lot of the control list. And reasonably so. The card's flying and lifelink, which is awesome. It also lets you draw an extra card, which is awesome. And then it gets a bonus for drawing that extra card, which is awesome, which is also going to lead you gaining more life. So lots of cool stuff going on with this card. And you're able to give it hexproof, so it's hard to kill. It's a good finisher, top end. It's good against aggro decks. Like, it fills a lot of slots in those decks. It is a little bit difficult to cast, but that being said, the control decks generally play different types of finishers at 5, 6, 7 mana anyway, traditionally, so this isn't a surprise. It's kind of right what you expected would be. Again, I don't expect it to be expensive because even the decks that are playing it are going to be playing one or two of them, but it's worth knowing that people will be looking for this card. Next on my list is Crocs, the Death's Hunger, or Titan of Death's Hunger. And truthfully, this is another card that I think right now is hyped more than it probably should be. There is some argument that this card could be used in Pioneer or Modern to more effect than even in Standard. Right now, the only place I've found for it in Standard is I'm playing a few copies in the red-black aggro deck, which may or may not be the best home. We'll find out in the next few weeks, I'm sure. But it's a powerful ability, and people are trying to play this card. I've seen several through my matches on Arena, so definitely one that's hyped. If you get one of the special versions, a foil one, whatever, people are definitely going to want it. So keep this one on your list. Abilities are powerful. It's fairly cheap to both cast and to escape out of the graveyard. So it's going to get some amount of play. Who knows how much, but it's a powerful card for sure. Uro. This one is getting played a ton. It's actually giving even more life to Nissa as if she needed it. And it's really finding a home in almost every Simic deck. I haven't really seen much outside of those lists, but it fits into so many decks. And I expect lots of people are going to be looking for this card. It's a little bit overhyped and maybe even slightly overvalued right now. So I would say if you find people who are willing to trade big for them, go ahead and trade, pick them up later. The card's doing multiple things in the sense that it's letting you gain life and draw a card and play an extra land, but it's not game breaking. You're not going to win or lose because you drew this card. It's just a really good card that goes into those decks. Another thing to think about, but it's definitely one you're going to expect people to be trading for this weekend. It's probably going to be hard to get your hands on one if you need one, so you may have to trade a little more to get them, but that's totally okay. It's a card that in the decks that want it, it is very good. Again, you're not going to win or lose because of it. It's not a game breaker, but it's good early, it's good late, and the life gain matters. Causus. This is one I'm really high on. I think Causus got overlooked early on because it doesn't fit the traditional Gruul type card that, the color set that it's in. But the reality is, it actually does a lot of work for those decks. Getting your opponent to sub 10 life and then being able to just ping them for 4 or 5 turns and bring the game to a close is big. It also removes cards from graveyards so your opponent can't escape them or just play cards out of the graveyard for various reasons, as is the theme of Theros. So it's doing a lot of work, and it actually turns out it's not that hard to activate. The games I've had it in play, I've had several where I've been able to make it live, and then I'm attacking with a 4/5 indestructible creature along my other group of creatures. So overall, definitely a card I think is good. It's probably a little undervalued. If you can pick up a couple, I would, if you're interested in playing red green in any variety. Or if you're even playing red or green and something, and maybe you want to splash it as a way to kind of control graveyards a little bit or get some incidental damage, that's good. It's also good in Commander because it hits each opponent, which is huge. So something else to think about. But yeah, this card, I think you could see it creep up a little bit after the weekend. I think a lot of it's going to come down to what the first couple of big tournaments look like with the new standard format. But I expect to see this card get some play. Definitely one as people discover it will probably want to be playing it more. Healy Odd Sun's Crown. There's not much to be said about this card that hasn't been said. I mean, if you watch all the other YouTube videos, if you're reading articles, almost everybody has said something about Healy Odd at this point. We don't know how good it's going to be in, say, Pioneer or Modern with different various combos that you can get with life gain and putting counters on stuff. But in Standard, it does have a home. I think people have been looking for a really fun, interactive, competitive mono white deck. This, along with Daxos from the set, which is an uncommon, allows you to get closer to having that type of deck. Now, that being said, there was a white deck that finished well at the end of the previous Standard season, but it wasn't as fun. It was very straightforward. Small creatures weren't really doing anything. Here you have all these parts that are doing a bunch of things, and life gains that are putting counters on stuff, and creatures that are growing. Like, it's a much more fun deck to watch, and it's powerful. Like, it can really bring games to the close, and you can still come back later if they sweep your board because you have Healy Odd. Then you drop 1 or 2 creatures that bring it live, and then you're off to the races again. So definitely expect Healy Odd to get some love. It's going to be easy to trade it. I think there's going to be a lot of people at your local FNMs or standard events that have been waiting to play a white deck of some kind. So Healy Odd's probably going to be easy trade fodder this weekend. Cetessan Champions next on my list, and man, this card is good. I think it was even a little bit underrated, even as people put it into decks. And now decks that are playing it are only playing 4 ofs. So that alone makes this a tradable card. If you want to play this style of deck, it's definitely a card you need to go after because you're playing 4 or none pretty much. It's huge. It gets extra cards. I mean, like, and not only that, it's benefiting from even your enchantment creatures that come into play, which is awesome. So you get to grow a creature, and it gives you some flexibility in the sense that you can plan around having extra cards in case your board gets swept. You don't have to go all in and put all your enchantments on it. You could be enchanting another creature, but still growing your champion, which is awesome. But yeah, if you want to play, especially the Selesnya enchantment deck, we've seen that. We've also seen a green, black, white version that's been showing up as well, also playing Cetessan Champion. So either version, you're going to want 4 of these, and the card is really good. I don't know how powerful or competitive the deck is overall, but I've played some of it and played against it, and it is tough. That much is for sure. So expect people to be looking for it. This is another good one. Won't have any problem moving, at least for the next 2 weeks, for sure. Now, Nightmare Shepherd's one that kind of caught people off guard a little bit, I think. I think when we saw a list early on for mono black of various varieties, this wasn't a card that really showed up. But over the first couple of days, started to change really quickly. And this is a card that I don't even think you necessarily have to be playing just mono black to get the advantage of. I think there's arguments that this could be the top end in even a Rakdos aggro deck, right? Like, you attack, you get your damage in, you get your opponent to say 10 or 12 life, but then you play a Nightmare Shepherd, they find a way to wreck your board, and then you have 3 or 4 more token creatures that are doing the same things. Granted, they're 1/1s, but you may still be getting to draw a card a turn. You still may be able to pump it up to do more damage or whatever the other creatures are doing. So this is a very cool card. I don't think we've seen all the applications for it. I don't think we've seen all the best homes for it. And the fact that the ability just happens, it's a triggered ability you're going to get almost every time, it's a big deal. I think this is a card that if you can get it on the cheap, I'd probably pick up a couple of extra ones because I think down the road, there's going to be some other combos with this card, whether it's 3 weeks from now or 3 months from now. Like, I think there's going to be some homes where this card's going to be very good. It's also a 4/4 flyer for 4, so it's kind of hard to overestimate the quality of this card. But again, I think it's one that quickly snuck up on people. It's starting to be seen a little bit more. I'd grab them while you can if you can get a good price on them. Vasa's Intervention. This is one that's not impressive in what it does. It just does what it does well. I mean, at instant speed, getting to look at your top cards and get to pick a couple of them, like that's always good, especially at the end of turn where you don't think you're going to get to spend your mana doing anything because your opponent decided to wait or they just activated and attacked and didn't play anything new. You don't have anything to counter. You don't have anything to spend your mana on. Great. Pay 5 or 6, look at the top couple of cards, put some in your hand, move on to the next turn. So you're getting to filter your top, get the best cards, but it's an efficient way to spend your mana. Then the other half is you can basically make it where you can counter almost any spell up to like turn 4 or 5 at least, which is still really good. And more often than not, I see people using the counterspell half than the actual card draw half, which doesn't really surprise me. The card's versatile, it's useful. I would expect to see people playing this, playing usually like 3 copies around other stuff, but who knows? It may end up being a 4 of down the road as the standard format kind of develops. But for now, yeah, definitely expect people to be playing this card and picking it up. And then with that, we have Vasa Deep Dwelling. I used the cool art just because I kind of wanted to remind everybody that all of these characters, or at least the gods, you can, and the demigods, I should say, you can get in these special constellation arts. Expect people to be looking for those and collecting them. So if you don't have a use for them or you don't want them yourself, or maybe even just want regular versions, see if you can trade up and get a regular one and something in exchange for the special frame ones. That's what I would do. I'm not necessarily one who collects all of the most rare hardcore things or foil things. So anytime I get my hands on these types, I'm usually looking to trade them for 2 or 3 copies sometimes, or that regular version and something that I'm going to put into a deck. That just helps me build more decks faster and I can play more events, and that's just more exciting to me than holding on to something forever. But anyway, Vasa, the point. The card's good. It works with several cards. I mean, returning something in and out of play and getting to reuse the abilities are great. It can let you reset cards if they come in with counters and you want to reload your counters. If they targeted a certain thing when they came into play, but you want to target something different, that's a thing you can do. You can steal creatures, because that's a thing we've seen happening. I mean, she combos with so many different things, and that doesn't shock me in the least. I mean, anytime you have blink effects, they can be powerful, but when they're reusable, they're even better. I mean, if you have stuff that comes in play, it draws cards, gains life, steals creatures, like the list goes on and on and on. This card is very good, and it's also not hard to get active so you can attack with it either. And she's a 6/5. That is substantial for something that blue is playing on turn 4, and possibly even able to attack with it on 5 while still getting to use the ability. So that is, and not only that, like, don't forget, she has another paid ability. You can just outright tap a creature. That can keep you from getting attacked and just stall the game for a while. It can tap down a blocker on a critical turn where you're trying to punch through. I mean, this card has a lot going for it. I expect Vasa will definitely be a card you're going to run into. People are definitely going to be playing this card. Different versions of Simic are playing it, to try to combo. Some are just playing it as a quality card. So yeah, this card, definitely one to look out for. Even if you're not buying, selling, trading, whatever on it, expect it to come up in the games that you're playing and look out for it. for sure. And then I guess I'd be a little lazy if I didn't at least mention these wonderful guys. I guess down here, there we go. That everybody's going to need these temples. I would suggest if you don't have your old ones and you're just going to be picking these up, get them as quick as you can. I don't think they're going to shoot up to some crazy value, but right now you should be able to get most of them for like $2 each in cash or trade. Probably the lowest they're going to be, so you might as well just pick them up. Even if for some reason they drop to $1.50 or whatever, for your set of 4, you're only going to lose like $2 in value at the worst. But if at any point they go up, you stand to gain everything out of these because they're going to be in almost every deck. So would not worry too much. I would just pick them up as you can. Maybe even like we talked about with that Vasa, right? If you get some of the constellation frame cards, maybe you trade for a regular version and a temple or two. See if you can get them to toss those in. Because no matter what deck you're building, you at least want to have access to your mana base. So go ahead, scoop these up early, save yourself the trouble later. But that's it. Those are my cards for the weekend. I would say at least going into week 1 that you should be looking out for. These are cards, again, that showed up in lots of decks in Arena that we've run into, seen people talking about them on Twitter, people making YouTube videos with them. So these are the cards that people are also going to be seeing a lot of through social media and everything else. And they're absorbing some of that same content, which means when they go to build decks, they're going to be looking for these. I would expect if you open a box or you do any heavy trading, this is your time to move a lot of these if you don't need them, because this is going to be probably the hottest time for these cards. Now, there are still other cards that, I mean, if we had a list of honorable mentions, this set is loaded. I could have probably came up with another 6 or 8 cards, but for now, this is probably all we need. I think this is going to help everybody. And again, this isn't a definitive 10 best cards. These are just kind of serving as a guide to help you over the weekend to know what to expect as far as what cards people may be playing and what cards people may be looking for in trades or other transactions magic wise over the weekend. But that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.